So I don't really remember when I became an anxious person or when it became apparent to me that I tend to be anxious, but I know in college that's when things started to kind of pop up. Um, I'll tell you exactly how it popped up in my life, and I wrote it down. So this is how it showed up. Anxiety showed up in my life. I was constantly being stuck in the past, and with that, I was worried about the future. When I was dealing with trying to find my purpose in life, it popped up there. There was insecurities that caused my anxieties. I had negative thoughts about situation. I also had negative self-talk. I also worried about not valuing my own opinions. I struggle with making decisions. I seek approval from others, and also being out of control in situations that tend to also make me a bit anxious. So like I was saying, when I was in college, that's when it first became apparent that this was going to be a struggle for me. And then around year 2016, 2017, I had a total breakdown, and that put me on a journey of seeking ways how to get this under control. If you see me looking down, that's because I wrote notes. I don't want to forget anything. But yes, so I had a total breakdown, boohoo crying. But from that point, that put me on a journey in self-discovery and finding ways how to improve. So out of all the things that I just said about how anxiety showed up in my life, it was pretty much all based on fears. And then because of that, I worried about certain things. I want to say that anxiety, it is a normal emotion. It is very healthy to be anxious. It could help us to get out of some situations that require us to react quickly. So it's not a bad emotion. It's just that when it becomes how you live, it controls what you do. That's when it becomes a problem. So how did I stop? How did I get out of? How did I learn ways to cope with being anxious? And I had to go back into my little journals and things to be able to figure out what I did back in 2018 to really get out of that anxious state. So the first thing is I began reading the Bible. I was reading the Bible every single moment I had. I also had made like a um, daily affirmations presentation out of PowerPoint. I created a slide with truths. So for instance, if I had a struggle about valuing my opinions, then I would write something like, Keithia, your opinions matter, blah, 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 blah. And I would record my voice on that. And in the mornings, I can go ahead and play the PowerPoint. I can see the visual, and I can also hear myself saying it to myself, even when sometimes I was struggling with saying it, if that makes sense. So I kind of like use my own voice to get my mind where it needed to be. I also found that writing Bible verses down helped. So for every problem I was going through, everything that was causing me to be anxious, what I did was I found a Bible verse that could combat that, and I would just write it down. So anytime the thought pop up in my mind, then I would just use that Bible verse to kind of correct my thoughts. My number one go-to Bible verse in that season was, God did not give me a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Doing all of that helped me to control my anxiety. Like I had power over that. The effect was so, I don't know, the effect was so apparent. Okay, let me see if I can describe to you the change that happened. So imagine that you're in an auditorium, a cafeteria with a bunch of people, and there's a bunch of conversations going on. And then in an instant, you're in a soundproof room. That's how my mind silenced. Like the things that kept going, the things I kept saying to myself that was not off the Lord, once I finally got under control, it was just total calm in my mind. And then of course, I read a lot of books that dealt with anxiety and how to overcome it. Now I want to say that although I was able to get my thoughts under control, be able to have better control over my anxiety, I will put a disclaimer here to say that if you're experiencing anxiety and you're trying to get better, trying to improve, and you're not seeing anything happen, do not discount seeking medical attention. Sometimes there's something chemically or hormonal that is causing it, that if you can get that under control, it may help you to be less anxious. So even seeking out therapy, that could be very helpful. But I don't want people to think that you should just pull through and try to figure things out on your own. If you are dealing with anxiety and you're finding it hard to get it under control, definitely seek outside help, whether it be medical or even from close family and friends. Recently on last Friday, I was listening to one of the YouTubers that I'm subscribed to. I subscribed to her because even though we're not going through similar situations, the way how she reacts to certain things, it feels very familiar to me. So I do like to watch her. So in one of her videos, she was doing a very chatty video and she was starting to break down and just different things that was going on, and she didn't know how to handle it. And in the moment, I was just sitting there watching her, the thought popped into my mind that peace is missing. So when that popped into my mind, I said, peace is missing. Peace is missing. So immediately I took my phone and I searched peace. And of course, it brought a definition. And from that, I into a spiral again, digging into the word, reading to see what does it mean about this peace? What does peace have to do with anxiety? In my study, in my research, I know that peace is a fruit of the Spirit, right? And that is something that Christians should have in their lives, growing, of course, daily in peace. And I was thinking to myself, okay, yeah, I'm supposed to have peace, but how do I have peace? Like, I like to be able to see, like to be able to know how to do something. I started thinking about some of the greats of faith, right, in the Bible. And I was thinking about Abraham. I'm like, how was Abraham able to say, God will provide an offering, when he was going up to with his son, Isaac? How was he able to say, God will provide an offering? How was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego able to say, when they were getting ready to throw them into the fire, the Lord is able to save us, but even if he doesn't, And how was Jesus able to go to the cross? While preparing to go to the cross, he was able to say, Father, it's your will, pretty much, I will do what you want me to do. How was he able to be at such a state of peace and rest? And even with personally with my own life, my dad got in an accident and he was a quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down for almost 2 years before he passed. How was he able to be there on a bed, unable to do for himself, be at such peace, at least from what I could see? I've never once heard him complain. Looking back on the 2 years that he was alive, I never once heard him complain about, saying, Lord, why me? Maybe he did in his mind, but I never heard it, and I saw that he never once wavered, he never once said, I can't believe God would do this to me. I never once heard him say that. So I'm thinking to myself, how were these people able to do that? How were they able to do that? So after spending the time to look through and kind of thought to myself, how were these people able to just make it through these crazy situations, whether it be Job or Joseph, all these people, and they were able to be so calm and so at peace, even though their circumstances, the situation was the total opposite. So this is what I was thinking about, right? And I have my computer here because I wrote the notes. So I asked myself, how were they able to make it through the situation, right? And then it highlighted that there was a certain level of trust, right? And then they also had a confidence that they would be okay. So naturally, again, with ChatGPT, I went there to put everything together in my head because I like to be able to have things flow, to have things simplified. This is what ChatGPT summarized, right? ChatGPT said, trust is surrender, confidence is bold assurance, and then peace is what settles in your heart when both are present. So to be able to have peace in situations, peace in Jesus, pretty much, peace in God, you need to have both trust and confidence. And yeah, dealing with fear and worry does require a certain level of trust, right? Because when I finally got that under control around 2017, 2018, was because I came to trust in Jesus, and I even got rebaptized in 2018 because of this personal conviction of trust, of coming to faith that I had. But there's another part of it, is the peace aspect. So like I said, last Friday, I went into a rabbit hole, researching and reading, just meditating on what it means to have peace. And so when I went to church last week, so this happened on Friday, went to church on Saturday, and I brought my notebook where I was taking all my notes of everything that was going through my mind. And I brought it with me, and on the car ride to church, I was spending the time just really reflecting. But even though I've written down these things, yes, I have to trust, I have to have a confidence in Jesus, but I like to have a visual. How does that look? Even though I know what these great people of the Bible did, Abraham, all these people, I needed to make it personal for me. So when I was at church, after church, one of my church moms invited me over for lunch. So when I got there, it was lunchtime. I told my husband to go ahead and get his plate, and then I would hold our daughter, and then we would switch. So the church mom, she said, hey, I will hold your daughter. You can go ahead and get your plate. So we're sitting down talking. I was eating. And when she was holding my daughter, my daughter flopped back a little bit. So like she flung herself back, and the lady looked at me and she said, did I see that? So in my head, I'm like, yeah, I saw that. And I'm going to summarize pretty much the thing that she was trying to say. She said, look at how, my daughter was able to flop herself back. There was a level of, trust. And she said that that's how we need to be with God, to have a childlike faith, to be able to trust like that. And in that moment, it hit me. I got the visual of what I needed to see regarding peace. To be able to have peace in God, there needs to be not only trust, meaning you're surrendered to Him, confidence, meaning that you have an assurance that you can believe that He says who He is and He will do what He says He will do. But there's a level of resting, there's a level of peace, there's a level of falling into that to be able to be settled internally. And that was missing. So even though, yes, I learned to correct my thoughts, correct my thoughts with truth, to be able to divert, even the stuff I say to myself, there was still a level of not resting that was missing, and that I'm still working through to improve. So yeah, so if you're dealing with anxiety, I'm just going to summarize it quickly. If you're dealing with anxiety, if you are trusting the Lord, you have confidence, or you're growing in confidence in what He says and who He is, there needs to be a time when you are at rest and at peace, trusting that He's with you in whatever situation that you're going through. And that settles our spirits. We stop trying to do things on our own. When we have prayed to the Lord for help, we're able to pause and say, God will respond. And even if He doesn't respond in the way that I want, that I'm okay, that He's still working on my behalf. He's heard me. He's working things for my good. Even though the situation may not change for a while, even though, for instance, you're sick with something and you're not recovering, or something is disturbing, creating chaos, creating unease in your life, you can rest in the Lord, knowing that He can be trusted, and that even if He doesn't do things how you would want Him to do, He is holding you like a baby. If you need a visual, just imagine yourself just falling in the arms of Jesus, knowing that He is able to carry you, He's able to catch you, He's able to hold your hand, He's able to provide for you food, shelter, clothing. He's able to open doors for you that you've been trying to open on your own. He's able to even bring you to a place of growth, to teach you. You can do so many things. Just picture a baby being led by parents and even a community. You'll just, I don't know, it's kind of tough to really even vocalize it, but I would say also another thing is with visually seeing yourself resting in the Lord, also take the time to talk to God. One of the things that I noticed with all these people, Abraham, Daniel, Job, all these people, they never once stopped speaking to the Lord. Even when the things that they said wasn't, I praise you, Lord. Sometimes it was, Lord, help me. Lord, what's happening? They were very much honest with how they're feeling. They didn't try to sugarcoat it. They said, Lord, this is how I'm feeling. Do something. I need you to intervene. But there was always a communication going on with God. And that's the same thing. If you're in a moment of anxiety, bring God in. It says, Lord, I'm feeling this way right now. Please help me. And then that's where that resting comes in. That reminds you that He has heard me. He's working on my behalf. I can trust that what He said is true, and that He will help me. There's grace. There's grace for me in whatever situation is. So yeah, that's all I want to say, is that there's hope for you if you're dealing with anxiety. That spending time with the Lord, remembering His promises, and just resting in the Lord will be helpful to overcome whatever you're going through that's causing the anxiety.